Welcome to Vpod.ai. I'm your host, Mike. And joining me today is our expert, Susan.
Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here.
You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit Vpod.ai to get started today.
Sounds like a great deal, honestly.
It really is. So I want to start by having you, the listener, picture this scenario. Think about two people standing in the exact same room.
Okay.
They're listening to the exact same conversation, hearing the same words, the same tone of voice, the exact same signals moving through the air.
Right.
But when they walk out the door, something completely different happens. One person just has all their existing beliefs completely validated. They feel great.
Yeah, perfectly comfortable.
Exactly. The other person walks away, totally unsettled. They're holding these profound new questions that they didn't even arrive with.
The gap between those two people is, well, it's fascinating because it isn't about intelligence. I mean, at least not the way we normally use that word in a, standardized testing sense.
Right. It's not about IQ.
No, not at all. It is not about where they went to school, their background, or, how many nonfiction books they read a year. The real difference happens in this invisible structural gap.
This microscopic split second, right?
Yes, exactly. Between the moment they receive that information and the moment they actually decide what it means.
And I really want to focus on that gap today. Because to understand how someone becomes what we're going to call a dangerous thinker.
Which is a great term, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. To understand that, we have to start with a pretty uncomfortable reality about human biology. We have to realize that most of what you and I consider thinking, as we go about our daily lives, is actually an illusion.
It really is. It's what cognitive scientists often refer to as recognition. Most people walk around believing they're thinking deeply about the world, but what their brains are actually doing is just pattern matching.
Pattern matching. So, how does that work in real time?
Well, they encounter a new piece of information, a new situation, or even a new person, and before they even fully process the nuances, their brain instantly maps it onto a pre-existing belief.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they essentially rifle through their mental filing cabinet, find a familiar label from past experiences, slap it on the situation, and just move on.
It makes me think of the predictive text feature on a smartphone.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. You type two words and the phone automatically fills in the rest of the sentence based on what you've typed in the past. You aren't actually writing the sentence anymore. You're just accepting the algorithm's guess.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. And we run on mental predictive text because actual, genuine critical thinking is incredibly expensive from a biological standpoint.
It physically drains you?
Yeah. The human brain consumes a massive amount of our body's energy. And sitting down to deconstruct a complex problem, it literally burns through cognitive resources. Recognition, on the other hand, is cheap.
It's the path of least resistance.
Exactly. It reduces the metabolic cost of navigating a highly complex world. It allows for quick decisions, it keeps you aligned with the opinions of your social group, and it gives you this warm, comforting feeling of certainty. Life just feels manageable.
But I'm guessing there's a catch.
A major catch. Recognition does not require actual understanding. It only requires a match.
It just has to feel familiar enough to pass a really low bar.
Right.
I see this all the time in the startup world.
Oh, I bet.
You'll watch a founder see a highly successful business model out in market. They look at it, run their mental predictive text, and decide they understand it entirely.
Even though they just saw the surface.
Exactly. They copy the surface language, the website design, the trendy marketing speak, and they just assume that because their inputs look the same, massive revenue will automatically follow.
And then, when the results completely fail to materialize, watch what they do next.
They point fingers.
Always. They blame the economy. They blame bad timing. They claim consumers just aren't ready for their genius. They completely miss the underlying invisible conditions, the distribution channels, the specific market timing, the proprietary relationships.
The things that actually made the original model work.
Exactly. They never understood the machine. They only recognized the paint job.
The paint job, that's so true. But okay, if running on mental predictive text works, say 99% of the time, just to get us through the day without collapsing from exhaustion, what actually breaks the loop?
That's the big question.
Right. What makes a person stop pattern matching and start doing the heavy, expensive work of genuine thinking?
The catalyst is friction.
Friction.
Yeah, friction is a lived interruption. It happens at the exact moment. Reality just refuses to align with the explanation you've been carrying around. Something fundamentally breaks the coherence of your worldview.
I'm trying to picture what that feels like. Is it like a major life crisis?
It can be, but honestly, it's often much more systemic and quiet. Think about an employee in a massive corporation. Okay.
They've been told their entire career that human resources exist to protect their well-being, right? They believe that is a fixed rule of the corporate world.
Sure, HR is there to help you.
Right. Then one day they witness a major harassment claim against a top-performing executive. And they watch HR quietly bury the complaint just to protect the company's stock price.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would do it.
Exactly. The formula they were operating from, this belief that the system is designed to protect the vulnerable, suddenly shatters. The stated purpose of the authority figure directly contradicts their actual behavior.
You know, I feel like my natural instinct in a situation like that, and probably the instinct of a lot of people listening, would be to find a way to rationalize it.
Of course.
To just say, that was just one corrupt HR rep, or, the world is just unfair. I need to keep my head down and work harder.
That is so common.
Isn't finding a way to resolve that tension quickly a sign of being adaptable and resilient? Like surviving the corporate world. You've just described the absolute default human response. Most people resolve the tension by adjusting their interpretation just enough to save their underlying system.
They just patch it up.
Yeah, they patch the narrative so the predictive text can turn back on. They tell themselves it was a rare exception. But friction isn't a problem to be solved or a discomfort to be smoothed over. Friction is a signal.
A signal that the map is wrong.
Exactly. Moving toward the contradiction is where the actual truth lives.
So instead of trying to make the discomfort go away, the dangerous thinker actually leans into it.
They expand the question instead of shrinking it. If one part of the corporate system doesn't make sense, they absolutely refuse to explain the inconsistency away with some platitude.
They don't just say, it is what it is.
Never. They trace that inconsistency back to the structure that produced it. They ask, well, if HR didn't protect the employee, what incentive structure are they actually responding to? They step out of passive alignment, and they begin building their own models of reality.
Okay, let me stop you there for a second.
Okay.
Because expanding the question sounds great in theory.
It does.
But if I suddenly stop trusting the surface-level explanations of my company, the media, the economy, I feel like I'm going to drown in paranoia.
That is a very real risk.
Right. If you question absolutely everything, how do you not just become paralyzed by the sheer complexity of the world?
Well, paralyzation is exactly what happens if you stop at merely asking questions. Asking questions is cheap. Deconstruction without a method just leaves you standing in a pile of rubble.
Which isn't very helpful.
Not at all. The massive shift happens when a person moves from asking what is happening to asking what is driving it.
What is driving it?
Yes. They stop looking at the visible events and they start looking for the invisible structure. They look for the incentives, the constraints, and the dependencies that are quietly influencing these decisions that appear to be freely made.
Okay, so if we use a theater analogy here.
I love analogies. Go for it.
Instead of just watching the puppet show and getting caught up in the drama of the story on stage, you pull your eyes away and you actively look for the strings.
Yes.
The lighting rigs, the hands pulling the levers in the dark.
That captures it perfectly. But to avoid getting overwhelmed by all those strings, you have to organize your observations. You have to build internal frameworks.
Internal frameworks.
A framework is basically a functional structure that sits between what you observe and how you respond. It's a simple, repeatable way of processing information under uncertainty.
Okay, I think I need a concrete example of that. How do I build an internal framework, and what does it actually look like in practice?
Let's look at a corporate sales team.
Okay, classic environment.
Right. The company's stated surface goal is long-term growth and customer satisfaction. But let's say they have a massive problem. They're signing up hundreds of new clients, but those clients are universally furious, and they end up canceling their contracts 3 months later. Right. The surface-level thinker, the manager using their mental predictive text, looks at this and says, our sales reps are getting lazy and promising things we can't deliver. We need to send them all to ethics training.
Because they're just looking at the immediate bad behavior.
Right. They're trying to fix the puppets. But the structural thinker looks at the incentive design. They realize the sales reps are paid their entire commission the moment a contract is signed, regardless of whether the client stays.
Oh, so there's zero financial penalty for churn.
Exactly. Zero. The framework the dangerous thinker applies here is incredibly simple. Behavior is dictated by compensation, not corporate values.
Wow.
People will always optimize for whatever metric you pay them for, regardless of what the lovely mission statement says.
That is incredibly clarifying. Because once you have that framework, you don't need to psychoanalyze individual sales reps.
Yeah.
You don't need to read their emails or, wonder if they're fundamentally bad people.
No, not at all.
You just look at the compensation structure, and suddenly all this chaotic behavior makes perfect logical sense.
And the best part is you can apply that exact same framework to politics, to healthcare, to the media.
Really? Like how?
Well, you stop asking why a news network is running a terrifying sensationalist story, and you just apply the framework. Behavior is dictated by compensation.
Oh, I see.
The network is compensated by advertising dollars, right? Advertising requires attention, and fear reliably captures human attention. The framework just cuts right through the noise.
Which means as you collect and refine these frameworks, your decision-making becomes way less random. You just aren't guessing anymore.
Exactly. Most people focus entirely on finding better answers, but an answer is always limited by the quality of the process used to reach it.
Right.
Dangerous thinkers refine their process. They constantly test their internal frameworks against reality. And if a framework fails to predict an outcome, they just toss it out and build a new one.
They don't hold on to it out of stubbornness.
Never. Over time, this evolves into a dynamic intelligence. They learn faster because they aren't busy defending broken mental models.
This structural way of processing information, it seemed like it would force a total reevaluation of how we view our own lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly how we view failure
Mm-hmm.
and how we view success, which, let's be honest, most of us just attribute to luck when we don't fully understand it.
Let's tackle failure and being wrong first, because that is the biggest hurdle for most people.
Okay, let's do it.
Most people violently resist being wrong, not because of the practical consequences of the error, but because of what it implies about who they are. If you have built your entire identity around a specific political ideology or a specific business methodology,
Then being proven wrong is processed by the brain as an existential threat to your identity.
yes,
Like if the belief dies, a part of you dies with it.
that is the exact psychological mechanism at play.
Yeah.
When a belief is tied to how you are seen by your peers, revising it feels like losing social ground. So people defend the belief. They actively ignore glaring contradictions just to preserve a reality that feels stable to them.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But dangerous thinkers completely decouple their identity from their beliefs. A belief is just a tool to test the environment. It is not a treasure you have to protect.
So certainty is almost a bad thing.
Absolute certainty is viewed as a liability. The more certain you are, the less you look, and the more blind spots you quietly accumulate in the dark.
So holding on to a broken model isn't loyalty to a cause, it's just an error in your navigation system.
Precisely.
I can see how that mindset completely changes your relationship to being wrong. But I really want to push back on the concept of success and luck here.
Go for it.
Because luck is a very real force in the world. You can't structural think your way out of, a freak lightning storm or a global pandemic hitting the exact week you decide to open a restaurant.
That's a fair point. We do have to differentiate between raw, unpredictable chaos like a natural disaster and what the business world routinely mislabels as luck.
Okay, so what is the business world mislabeling?
Most of what people call luck, whether it's good or bad, is actually just unobserved structure.
Walk me through that. Because if someone's massive software company fails and they say, hey, the market conditions just turned against us, you're saying they're basically using bad luck as a shield.
Yes, exactly. Calling an outcome luck removes all responsibility and tension. If the failure was just the economic weather, there's nothing to examine and nothing you could have changed. You get to just be a victim of circumstance.
So very convenient.
Very. But dangerous thinkers see success and failure as highly legible consequences of three specific structural layers: leverage, positioning, and control.
Let's slow down and define those, because this feels like the absolute core of the whole philosophy.
It really is. Okay, imagine two developers, developer A and developer B.
Got it.
They both build identical, incredibly useful software tools. They are equally intelligent and they work equally hard.
So all things being equal on the talent side.
Correct. Now, developer B launches their tool as a consumer app. They're relying entirely on a viral social media trend to get users, and they have zero funding. That is their setup.
Sounds risky.
Very. Developer A takes the exact same code but uses capital to hire a sales team. That is leverage. Effort scales linearly, but leverage, whether it's capital, code, or distribution networks, that compounds.
Okay, so developer A is already moving faster because they have a machine working for them, not just their own two hands.
Exactly.
What about positioning?
Positioning is where you sit within an ecosystem. Developer B positioned their app in a saturated consumer market where attention spans are short and willingness to pay is practically near zero.
A tough crowd.
Very tough. Developer A positions their identical tool inside the B2B enterprise space. They target financial compliance teams who are legally mandated to buy tools that solve this specific problem.
Oh, wow. So they have to buy it.
Yes. The exact same skill set produces stagnation in one environment and explosive growth in another. Positioning aligns what you offer with what the structure inherently rewards.
I'm cracking with leverage and positioning. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But let's say both developers actually get some traction.
Mhm.
Where does control come in?
Control is about who owns the variables that dictate survival. Developer B built their entire app to run on top of a major social media platform's API. They rely entirely on that platform for data and users.
Which happens all the time.
It does. Meanwhile, developer A spent a little extra time building proprietary data pipelines. 6 months later, that social media platform abruptly changes its rules and cuts off third-party access. Developer B's entire business is wiped out overnight.
Boom, gone. And developer B immediately goes to the press and says, we had terrible luck. The market shifted.
Exactly. But the dangerous thinker looks at developer B and says, you didn't have bad luck. You built your house on rented land without a lease.
Wow.
Developer B had zero control over pricing, access, or distribution. The less control you have over the underlying variables of your system, the more you are exposed to volatility. It looks like random chance, but it is actually highly predictable risk.
And developer A survived because they retained control over those variables.
Yes. They trace outcomes back to the structures that produce them, which allows them to course correct significantly faster than the rest of the pack.
You know, hearing all of this, understanding leverage, recognizing unobserved structure, seeing the strings instead of the puppets, it sounds like an absolute superpower.
It really operates like one.
You are essentially operating with a clearer map of reality than everyone else in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So why is this labeled dangerous? And honestly, if it's such an incredible advantage, why are so few people actually doing it?
They are labeled dangerous not because they're, aggressive or disruptive in a chaotic way. In fact, they are often very quiet, measured, and outwardly pretty unremarkable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What makes them dangerous to institutions and traditional hierarchies is that they are nearly impossible to manipulate.
Because you can't just feed them a PR statement and expect them to run their mental predictive text.
Exactly. They refuse to outsource their judgment to authority figures without testing the logic first. They run incoming information through their own frameworks.
Which makes them a headache for management.
A huge headache. In any system that depends entirely on consensus, where efficiency relies on everyone blindly agreeing on the narrative, someone who interprets reality independently is genuinely difficult to manage.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a massive portion of human decision-making is purely imitative. People choose careers, investments, and behaviors simply based on what appears to work for the herd.
But operating outside the herd has to come with a massive cost. It just sounds exhausting, constantly looking for the hidden structures everywhere you go.
The human cost is significant, and it's primarily social. People who question default assumptions and refuse to engage in superficial pattern matching are very frequently misread.
Misread how?
Well, they're seen as arrogant or contrarian, or just as someone who needlessly overcomplicates simple things. It creates a very specific kind of loneliness.
You know, I think anyone listening right now who genuinely loves to learn and deconstruct systems knows exactly what that loneliness feels like.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like walking into a crowded theater to watch a play, but for whatever reason, you are the only person who can see the stagehands frantically moving the props around in the background.
That's a great image.
Everyone else is, crying at the tragic scene, and you are just watching the structural mechanics of how the illusion is produced. You have to decide whether to lean over and whisper, hey, those are just painted wooden blocks, right?
Yeah, right.
And ruin the illusion for everyone, or just sit there in silence.
That is a very heavy, very real experience. Choosing this path completely removes the warm ease of certainty. It creates a persistent awareness that The conversations and shared assumptions happening around you just don't actually match the underlying territory.
Yeah.
And the thing is, once you learn to see the underlying incentives, once you shift from reacting to surface events to mapping the structural conditions, you can't go back. You can't unsee the stagehands.
But the trade-off has to be worth it.
The trade-off is profound. Eventually, without needing to force it or be loud about it, this way of thinking puts you in a position where control isn't just assumed or inherited. It is quietly and precisely exercised.
You take the reins.
Yes. You stop moving with the flow of broken systems and you start seeing where genuine influence actually exists. You become truly sovereign over your own decisions.
Sovereign over your own decisions. That is the ultimate goal. Well, we've covered incredible ground today.
We really have.
We started with the biological illusion of thinking, where our brains are basically just running predictive text to save energy. We explored how friction forces us out of that loop, why we need to build internal frameworks to find the strings behind the puppets, and how understanding leverage, positioning, and control completely destroys the myth of luck.
Perfectly summarized.
The core takeaway here is clear. Do not protect your beliefs as if they are part of your identity. Test them. Embrace the friction when things don't make sense, because that discomfort is the exact moment actual thinking begins.
Developing this kind of dynamic, structural intelligence becomes an incredible compounding advantage. In a world that desperately relies on consensus, where everyone is incentivized to stay on the surface and take the easy answers, the person who sits in the discomfort of finding the structural truth adapts faster, and they see emerging conditions earlier than anyone else.
I love that. To wrap up today's exploration, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. Think about a widely accepted, quote-unquote, common sense rule in your own workplace or industry today. Something everyone just accepts as the way things have always been done.
Right.
Now, instead of asking if that rule is true, ask yourself this. Who actually benefits from everyone behaving as if this rule is true? What incentive structure is keeping that rule in place? The answer might just change the way you navigate your entire career.